Okay, let's go to the biggie. Number 2, Ohio State traveled to State College today to go up against number 13, Penn State. Honestly, styles make fights. And Penn State got knocked out. Was it 2 weeks ago? They had a bye. They had Michigan, a bye week, Ohio State set up pretty good. You're still sandwiched in between two monsters, but regardless, I thought they would come back, bouncing back better. Penn State with the lead in the fourth quarter. They give up 28 points in the last 6 minutes. They get blown out 44-31. Strange game. If you to look at it on paper, it's going to look strange. Penn State outgained the Buckeyes 482 to 452. They controlled the pace. They controlled both ends of the line of scrimmage for most of the game until the dam broke. Hack already gave it to you earlier. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the go-to. He had the cape flowing. Couple big third down and fourth down opportunities. The Buckeyes line up and go straight to him. He pays it off for him. Ohio State remains undefeated. Felder, we're going to start with you because I know Hack will take us out. Did Ohio State answer some questions today, or was this just a monstrous drop on Penn State's part?
I think they answered some questions. It's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. But here's the thing. The reality for me, they're not where they want to be when it comes to running the football.
Who is they?
Ohio State. Ohio State is not where they want to be running the football. They are not as tough as they want to be up front. And they spent, in my estimation, they probably spent 45 minutes. Go ahead, Hack.
What I will say, though, is unlike previous years, Ryan Day is at least showing a propensity to not abandon it.
The run.
Full on, just fuck it. You've seen Ryan Day do that in the past where he's just
the Haskins season. Yep.
Here we go. We're 2 yards of carry. All right, screw it. We're dropping back 55 times.
Correct.
Still doing it. I think that was very valuable today, and I didn't want to cut you off, but I think that's what you were probably getting to.
You hit the nail on the head. I don't have to say it anymore. They did work on it, and then obviously when Mayan Williams gets hurt, they're like, we got to go with Henderson, and they're doing something that we've seen Alabama do a lot of times, which is this is the thing that we're working on today, and this is the thing that we're going to do. And then when they get to that point, when you get to the fourth quarter and it's a one-score game, and you're like, okay, we got to do the thing that works so that we can make sure that we win this game because we ultimately have bigger goals than just figuring this out. And I'll just say this. I think that the most beautiful part of this game for me, and I know Penn State lost, and you lose by 13, and I understand, but the reality for me is watching the way they use Parker Washington to isolate him as the number 3 receiver instead of he's their leading receiver. In theory, he should be number 1, right? Like on the outside. Maybe he could be number 2 in the slot. But they played him as the number 3 guy a lot, which means he got ISO'd on safeties and linebackers. And that little circle route, that little angle route, that bang, like that little snag, that little, like it's like a whip. Like he's doing all these things, and he's doing it to people that can't cover him. And it's not fair to them, but it's a great schematic situation. This is a guy, listen, we can talk about Marvin Harrison, 10 catches for 185. Parker Washington, 11 catches for 179 yards. And so what we've seen is an Ohio State defense that has been rebuilt, that is aggressive, that is tough. But when you're playing cover 0 and that number 3 guy is the other team's number 1 guy, you're going to have problems with that. And I don't think Ohio State figured out how to adjust. So that's something that Jim Knowles is going to have to address. I don't know who else can hurt him that way, maybe until they get to the playoff. But that is something that it's on film now. You know what I'm saying, Hack?
I see
it. Go ahead, Hack. It's on. No question, it's on film. They're going to have to make their adjustments to Felder's point. And that's an acute point. From a macro level, Ohio State, like my daughter and I love watching those like memes and YouTube things where people are messing around by the cage and they're leaning up against some kind of animal reserve or something, and that lion or that gorilla grabs them. Like, what are you doing up there anyway? Every time You turn the ball over against the Buckeyes, they charge you for it. It's not like they give it back to you. They tax you for it. 4 turnovers today. The turnover margin between the two teams, 4-0. And Penn State outgained them, and then they outclocked them, outrushed them. Ohio State only had 26 carries, but that's still some dedication. 98 yards, 3.5 yards a carry. But they tax you. They're versatile on offense, and they attack you, and they tax you on defense for mistakes made. So they're good enough to beat you if you're on your best game, and they're definitely going to get you if you start just throwing the ball around and just being loose with it. To me, they continue to answer more questions, and they're showing resolve, and a 28-0 spurt in the last 6 minutes of the game from all 3 phases to run this game out and say, good, finally. It's that horse with the last, what's that? The breakaway stretch in the Derby?
Yeah.
Gone. See it. Gone. All we were doing. It's good that you stayed with us for this long, but we're out. Like, they play all 4 quarters. They don't get bored, and they're it's a dangerous team. It's a dangerous team.
No doubt. Felder, did you have something you wanted to get at?
Yeah, I was going to say this. I thought CJ Stroud was bad for 75% of the game.
I wouldn't say bad. He wasn't as CJ Stroud as he normally was, in my opinion. He missed a couple, and they dropped a couple.
The fumbles, the batted balls.
But that Penn State –
the fumble is something that has the fumble, that's 2 in a row.
You're talking about in the red zone, the sack?
No. Okay, I've got a couple things, and I want to get both of you guys. You guys know more about quarterback play than I do. But I got 2 things. One, the fumble, because it looked very similar to the fumble that he had against Iowa. The Iowa fumble obviously led to the touchdown for Iowa, but this one led to a strip sack that ultimately was another turnover. But the other thing for me, and it seemed to course correct after halftime, and especially later in the game, but the way that he gives ground with pressure, instead of stepping up, instead of moving in, instead of using some of that athleticism that we've seen him have, I don't know. I don't know how you fix that, honestly.
Well,
so honestly, I'm asking you guys who know way more, because he gives so much ground.
He's not a great athlete. I think he's like a good athlete, whatever the good line is. His feet are just on the other side of a good athlete, and he's not in those positions that often.
Sure.
And they got so much stuff rolling. I don't think that part of his game, which, a really good defense like Georgia could press that out. I just think it only happens in flashes. I don't think it's enough of a it just doesn't have enough of an occurrence. Yeah, it's not a big enough.
He doesn't. Yeah, but I do agree with you, Felder. Like, I think if he learned how to move up in the pocket and press the defense in that manner, as opposed to trying to capture edges all day long, he'd see a lot. I think he'd find more completions without having to take hits from that way. And I think he'd also find more lanes where he can get down, go get 6, 7, 8 yards, get down and keep it moving. But yeah, no, I was impressed with the way CJ played. I thought he answered the bell in some bigger moments. He just didn't have that. There wasn't like that sexy, flashy, like consistent 4 quarters of just.
It wasn't wire.
I think there was
wire to wire.
There was this, but ultimately, like when they needed him, I thought he answered the bell.
Absolutely agree. I think his game shot up when they needed him, and you could see it when he was there on the sidelines, and he was like, "Okay, we're gonna do."
Yeah.
And they showed that hero shot of him, and then he came in, and guess what they did? Boom, 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 boom. So, Penn State guy, give me your read on the game.
Well, so for me, I thought Penn State matched up better against Ohio State than they did against the Michigan team from a personnel standpoint, the way they were built. George, you and I talked about this a little bit today, and I've talked about this at length with Josh Perry. If you guys want to listen into that, because he brings a really unique perspective as an Ohio State guy as well. But I think Penn State has gone more to like trying to match up with the East-West, longer, freakier, smaller, more athletic guys that can run sideline to sideline, not really built for a team that's going to say, hey, we're 320, 325 across the board. We're coming this way. They're playing the up and down NBA style run and gun type basketball game. That's how Penn State's playing defensively. That's how they built their team. That's how they built their roster. At the end of the day, George, I think what you were getting at is I think Ohio State has shown, and I don't think Ohio State's anywhere near where they need to be offensively in terms of consistent execution at this point in time in the season to talk about national championship and things like that. Do they have the potential? 1,000%. Something we still haven't talked about is we haven't seen Jackson Smith and Jigba since like the first half of the freaking Notre Dame game this year. So like you add this guy to the way that Marvin Harrison Jr. has started to emerge and a few of the other guys they have, like you're talking about a completely different ball game, in my opinion. But like I said, I'll shelf that for right now. Ohio State defensively is leaps and bounds better than they were last year. They're a much more complete football team, both sides of the football, all three phases. And I think, George, what Ohio State has that Michigan doesn't necessarily have is they can play from behind. They have that press you offensively where we're showing a propensity to run the football. We're not where we need to be, but we've shown flashes. We've had games where we've ran it up people's asses. We've had games where we've had to kind of take our lumps, go for 3 yards a pop, and have everybody else start making plays for us, whether that be defensively or our receivers. They're showing a propensity and a growth in the right direction for me, and I think that they're a team that has a lot going for them, and they just are figuring out ways how to make it all come together. And that's the beauty of it is they got time to do it, and they're still winning football games by doing it. So I think we still have a lot to see out of this Ohio State team. And then Penn State, like I said, I think they fought. I just think it ultimately came down to you were running against a bigger, faster, stronger horse. You kept up for as long as you could, but sometimes shit happens. I think there's some decisions, some things like that happen throughout the game, that momentum swings, whatever. But at the end of the day, I just think they got outlasted.
Before we move, so this is setting up to be one of the great all-time clashes. Michigan, Ohio State, with Michigan coming in with the last win. Both going to be undefeated. It feels like the fate of the world is going to be there. And there's a realistic chance both could squeeze on into the finals, into the playoffs, no matter how the ending is,